All right. Hope everyone had a wondrous July 4th. It was a holiday. Awesome. If it wasn't a holiday, still hope it was awesome. Probably the bad day. Bad day to do this because I don't have like a ton of extra time over the hour. So this may be part one of several, but I think it's worth doing. And I was reminded of this. Some folks were talking about I think Axe and Adventure Conquer King system. I don't know what I forget if the S stands for something. And some folks really love it a lot. I'm not really interested in Axe itself, but what often gets brought up is how much, depending on your point of view, obviously, because I haven't read the rules, how much people will look at something like Axe and say, "Hey, a lot of this stuff was in the companion book." That the companion book of the BECMI line contains a lot of the same kind of domain information, domain mechanics, domain procedures that we'll find in retroclones other games. I have the companion book. I have the whole BECMI set. I actually got it, I think, from the G Plus days ages ago, and I'm so thankful I did because now the prices for some of these books, if you were to go find them, the originals anyway, out in the wild, it can be formidable. Let's just say that. But their PDFs are available, and I've linked to the show notes on Drive Through. I think I looked this morning, and I think they're under $5 for the PDFs. Now, should I guess I should define what beckme is. So in 1981, they put out TSR at the time, put out Basic Expert, which is the rule set that Old School Essentials is based on. And this was by Tom Moldvay and others. And originally, what we would call the beckme set, it was the same as BX. Originally, BX was going to expand beyond Expert. Expert wasn't meant to be the end. It's kind of interesting that it ended up being the end for that line, obviously. And I think that has had ramifications. I think how people have really looked at BX as a product. And I think it's interesting because a lot of people will reflect upon the kind of simplicity and this sort of tight, contained framework and really admire it. But it wasn't really the intention. It was kind of unintentionally. That's just how it ended up, maybe for the best. But they rebooted the line a few years later. I don't remember the dates with Mentzer. Howard, is it Howard Mentzer? Am I misremembering my names? Frank, sorry, Howard. Frank Mentzer. Frank Mentzer a few years later, and the BE in beckme is Basic Expert. Instead of doing BX, they did BE, and then from then there's C, which is this book, Companion, M, Master, I, Immortals. So in some alternate universe, maybe we got beckme, but it was it was kind of a different beckme, a Moldvay beckme, other than as opposed to a Mentzer beckme. Either way, there's a lot of good material in here. We're looking at book one right now, which is the Player's Companion. So this is maybe a slight change, definitely a change from BX. In BX, we have Basic and Expert, and each one of those slim books has the player information and the GM information in one. So if you open the basic book, the first half is roughly player information, second half is GM information. With beckme, they split them up. So we're in book one, which has the player-facing information, and then there's something they call book two, which will have the GM information. I'm going to kind of look at both of them because why not? I don't imagine I will get through both those books today. We'll see if we come to a kind of a natural stopping point. We have a preface by Brian Bloom, which I'm going to skip. And I haven't really vetted or checked these scans, but these are the ones from Drive Through. So I'm presuming some of the scans, even the official ones you get through Drive Through, can be a little bit dodgy. But like I said, I haven't checked these. I haven't heard any complaints about them. So I'm presuming that everything is here. There are some of them where you can actually see, like they literally scans of someone's personal copy where you can kind of see little notations and stuff. I have not. I download these. I bought them a while ago and I downloaded, but I haven't really gone through them. So it is kind of fresh to me, which I always enjoy. All right, so we have the intro, the changing game. This might be interesting to look at. Whoops. Maybe I need. Should I go? Let me go. Hold on. Let me. Like exit full screen for a minute. Let's do this. I kind of like the book view, but the text is small enough. I think that maybe single page. Okay, here we go. The changing game. Your characters have visited dungeons, defeated many strange and evil creatures, and found great and wonder treasures. But games for high level characters are often different, as new as when the characters first brave the unknown wilderness. To see how the game itself changes to suit all levels of characters, we need to think of the long term game. Beginning and low level characters, levels 1 to 6, learn the ways of adventuring and do not usually think about the many years ahead. Dungeon adventures are common, and a few short wilderness journeys usually occur. Where the characters live may be considered to happen without playing, or maybe in a boarding house of the hometown. Hi, Bruce. That was my cat, Bruce. Quote unquote name, which is ninth level or above, except for the halfling and mid level characters, levels 7 to 14, often travel far and wide. Long journeys, deep dungeons, and special tasks are typical adventures in this range. The character usually builds or buys a stronghold or takes rooms in another's castle in exchange for services or payments. This range of characters is detailed in the D&D expert set. Companion or upper level characters, levels 15 through 25, continue the exploration or conquest of the world. They may become PC rulers to gain power and wealth, or remain travelers to gather knowledge and fame. By level 25, the quote unquote home base has become either a strongly fortified castle complex or secret stronghold. Ooh, a secret stronghold. Epic quests and other planar problems are typical adventures. High level characters are detailed in this set. And I'm not going to go into, but we have Master, which goes even further. And then, of course, then there's Immortality, the paths of immortality that kind of come after that, or maybe are even parallel to that. I don't recall. So we can see one of the things that people that maybe has not aged that well with BECMI, somewhat in opposition to BX, is how they've kind of stretched things out. So you're going from basic expert goes from, first level to, I don't know, 14, 15, I think. And they has kind of that dot sort of in the expert set where you can kind of keep leveling up, but it's very small returns after a certain point. I think maybe most things have kind of maxed out their real benefits between 10th level and 14th level. And for demi-humans might even be lesser. And one of the issues that's came up at BECMI is when they stretched the levels out to get to a real 36 level progression, then the thief, for example, suffers mightily because they stretched out the progression of thief skills. And if you already thought that the thief was kind of hard pressed with the way their skills kind of maybe not so clearly defined, not quite sure what they mean, and then how the numbers for some of them are quite low, success rates anyway. Well, now stretch that out, double the stretching out of when those rewards kick in. So then instead of getting maybe a couple percentage points every level, now they're pulled and stretched out. So you have a 15. So sorry, let me continue here. Upper level game. So you have a 15th level character. What are you going to do now? From this point, your character may travel far and near, or may settle down to rule land. Both can be exciting, adventurous, and fruitful paths to follow. Whichever you choose, the games you play will be somewhat different than they have been at lower levels of play. Characters in this range may have many powers and can easily handle the more quote unquote routine monsters. The adventures are much more than simple quote kill the monster, grab the treasure unquote affairs. Role playing is more important and more fun. So these are just some interesting notes, right, about kind of where the game is. So you kind of in kind of OD&D and in BX, your name level is kind of the beginning of the end sort of thing. That's when you've essentially reached pretty much the heights of what you're going to get. And then it's all about, well, we can domain stuff, but then you're kind of riding off into the sunset. With BECMI, because they're stretching things out, now name level isn't even halfway through the progression. If you're looking at kind of fully taking your character from 1 to 36, you're reaching name level at 9th level is nothing. So there's much more of this concept of, well, they have to really define more. Well, what are you going to do now? Because if you're coming from an earlier system, or you're coming from something, okay, and I'm this high wizard, and I've been doing all the dungeon stuff, kind of that answering that question of like, well, what are you going to do now? So I appreciate that they're asking the question. And remember, this is player focused. So this is really something that they really mean for the players of the game to read. Characters are more independent. When the characters started their careers, they needed each other just to survive. But now a few trolls present nothing more than an exercise rather than a deadly danger. Now the characters aren't as dependent on each other. Each can survive and prosper as an individual. The persons with whom a character adventures are now more important as friends than as each other's bodyguards. The campaign world plays a large part in D&D games of this range. Although dungeons or wilderness adventures are fun, consider the character's reasons for being. Determine your character's purpose in life. Set your character's goals such as power, riches, fame, or knowledge. And I'll skip the rest of that. But again, intriguing here in that if you think of the modern game, a lot of these things here, right? The individuality, the goals, right? What is your goal? These are things that you tend to establish session zero, character generation. What is this character out and about for? But the idea appears to be that you're really not thinking about this stuff until you get to these kind of levels where you've sort of done everything and you've kind of reached a point of, okay, I'm moderately safe from the smaller threats of the world. I've established myself, and then it's kind of now what? Which is just a different, neither one's right or wrong. But I think it's interesting that here you're not necessarily putting off, but the idea is that you're asking the question kind of once you have achieved, call it 33% of the game. If we're going to 36, you reach name level by 9th level, or even 50%, right? So if you got 9th level and you're like, all right, that's great, and we're about a third of the way through, then you get to about a little bit less than halfway through, and it's like, okay, been there, done that. Now, what do I really want? All right, I'm going to skip the rest of this because I don't think it's super. I don't want to get too tied up, but it is kind of fun. So then we get to the character section. So companion set levels 15 to 25, and then the master set goes the rest of the way, and then we have the Immortals set that I think layers sort of on top of the master set. Or maybe it's afterwards. I don't remember. I never really got in the Immortal set. I never had the BECMI books growing up. That was one of the kind of the fun things of coming back as an adult, is being able to, especially when I recollected these, or collected and recollected some of them, was I went and got some of the books that I didn't have. And I was able to get a whole BECMI set back in the G Plus days. And I never had it. At least I don't, I may have had some of it, but I definitely didn't have all of it. So I never got to play or run or really even read the Immortals. It doesn't interest me that much, but I think in a post, was Dragonlance the first one? Those the books anyway, to have this idea of the striving to replace the gods or become a god. We'll read it at some point, but I have no particular history with it, and I'm really not even really with Companion either. All right, so we get some new armors and weapons. Following armors are optional. Your DM will tell you which, if any, are available. Great. So we're getting Bastard Sword, Blowgun, Bola, Heavy Crossbow, Blackjack, Net, Trident, and a Whip. Everybody loves the Whip. What does the star mean? Asterisk means this weapon requires, okay, it's a two-hander. They're obviously, at this point, I think variable damage. I don't know if so in BX, in the basic set anyway, basic box, the default damage is 1d6 for everything, and then there's an option to do variable damage, which was introduced in the Greyhawk supplement to the white box earlier on, but they kept it as an optional rule. I'm fairly sure, though, I'd have to go back and check. At this point, we're pretty much firmly embedded in the variable damage. So we get 2 to 7, 2 to 9. Okay, I'm not really interested, but it's kind of fun that they have these. And something I like about these box sets, or these kind of things, though, I wish they didn't do it as a level thing, is that you can really engage with different aspects of the game. If your party doesn't really care about domains and that stuff, then you don't really need the companion set. If they're don't care about becoming immortal, then you don't need the immortal set. They didn't force you to buy some huge block of books. Now, I'm sure as completionists, people want to get the whole set to get it, even if they never use it. And of course, we do that with gaming stuff all the time. But I kind of wish that would come back a little bit. Maybe people would be accused of trying to have people, oh, they need me to buy 8 books. But I think the idea of having different kind of aspects of the game, and then, hey, if you just want to do dungeon crawling, then just buy the dungeon crawling book and don't worry about the wilderness book until and if you actually want to run wilderness. And then you can buy the wilderness book. And then, hey, if you want to do domains, then buy the domain book. But if you don't want to, then don't bother. In terms of these weapons, let's see. The Blackjack has a knockout, a stun, and a delay. What does that mean? So let's see. Blackjack, 1 to 2 plus special. Okay. Knockout. The victim is immediately unconscious and remains helpless for 1 to 100 rounds. Stunned. The victim may move at 1/3 normal rate, but cannot attack or cast a spell until another saving throw is made. A new saving throw can be attempted each round at the end of the hand-to-hand combat phase of the round. aka melee. While stunned, the victim suffers a -2 penalty to all saving throws and a +2 penalty to armor class. And then also, I guess these are potential. I wonder if I'll have to wait till we get to the GM part of it. But I guess these are potential things. So you get the blackjack. Either you knock them out, stun them, delay, or presumably you miss. Oh, here it is. So see, look at that. I'm not reading in order. Okay, so this is interesting. So we get the victim's level or hit dice, and they get a bonus to their saving throw depending on how many hit dice they have. And then these different weapons all have specials. So kind of the thing that unites at least some of these weapons is this idea they now are special. So for the blackjack, they have a saving throw. I'm not sure which saving throw are they saying. Are they saying which saving throw? I'm not sure. Maybe paralysis? I don't know. You could probably define how we're going, but it's kind of neat. Kind of neat. So you'd have the blackjack. If you're on a normal person, they don't get any bonus or saving throw, and if they miss, they're knocked out. But you notice if you get to a high level, all you're doing is delaying them, which is also interesting. I think the thing is I would like here. So I like this table, but I think this is where I would adapt the cleric's turntable, because that table gives you essentially the level of the victim, which is good, but also the level of the attacker, which is also good. Because I think if you're even, then you should be able to knock them out. If I'm a 12th level knight and I go to whack a 12th level wizard or whatever, then I should have a chance to be able to knock them out, because we're basically even. We're power on power. However, if I'm first level and I'm trying to knock out a 12th level magic user or whatever, 12th level fighter, good luck. Maybe I'll delay them, but chances are I'm probably not. And then for the bowl of the net or the whip, you can entangle, slow, or delay, which is kind of nice. So one of the problems I know I've seen with kind of modern D&D and some of these weapons is that, the whip, and people are like, well, there's no reason to take the whip. It doesn't, we got to fix the whip because it doesn't do as much damage. And it's just, why would I ever take a whip? And I always find those kind of funny, because there's probably a reason that most folks didn't go around with whips as their weapon of choice, because of these things that they're mechanizing as a little bit of damage. Yeah, whips hurt. And yes, you can definitely kill somebody with a whip, but outside of that kind of wrapping around their neck, you got to whip somebody a long time to do that. Much longer than if, hey, you just stab them. It's probably it's even maybe a bit generous to give them the damage they have, given kind of what's going on. And then you're in some kind of melee and you're going to whip, do the whip action. It's not really good for that. There's a reason why folks didn't really adopt that as a weapon of choice. But this case, you can keep the low damage, but now you can get this entangling action, which is, you can get the whip around them, trip them, whatever, entangle them, and then come out. Like I said, I like this. I dig it, and I like these special effects. I might just want to change it to make it more relative instead of absolute with these level points. And then for blowguns, death, paralysis, and then 25%. Wow, that's a good one. Percentage of hit points. Wow, the victim loses this percentage of original hit points. This may cause death. Yikes. That makes the blowgun pretty. I would definitely make that kind of a, I don't know. It's hard to say what to do with that weapon, but that's pretty darn strong. You might lose 25% of your full hit points. Whew. Could be tough. Could be rough. Don't mess with the blowgun, guys. Excuse me. Okay, we get more weapon. I do like these. What do they call it? Triptych. And this is just some watered down apple juice for the working man, apple cider. All right, swords, missile weapons and devices. Great, those are fine. Miscellaneous weapons, blackjacks, nets, whips. I like it. All right, unarmed combat. Here we go. Let's see if I just want to zoom in. Okay. Unarmed combat occurs when a character attacks an opponent without using a weapon. All classes and levels of characters may use unarmed combat to stop or capture an opponent while inflicting little or no damage, or when no weapons are available. Note that if an unlisted weapon is used, normal weapon combat systems apply, such as in brawls, throwing mugs, tables, and chairs. These are all unlisted weapons. In unarmed combat, the attacker either strikes an opponent with a fist, kick, etc., or tries to grab an opponent, jump on, tackle, etc. Thus, two systems are used, one for striking, including all unarmed blows, and one for wrestling. All right. So, that's one of the things that folks have always looked for is kind of wrestling and unarmed combat rules. And OD&D had, I think it had, did it have, I think it had something, or there was something in one of the examples. I think there's definitely something in an early strategic review or Dragon that kind of got into it, but those had some issues. So kind of interested. I'm not going to spend too much time in here, but it's kind of neat to see what they thought. Basic and expert does not give you any rules. Okay, so you can strike or wrestle. And then if you strike, you potentially stun or knock out. A strike has no effect if the defender is twice the size of the attacker or larger. A halfling cannot strike a human with effect, but any other combination of characters is possible. Interesting. I would probably let a halfling strike a human. I don't find that too crazy. They're only one size down. I do always like the size. I like when they actually codified the kind of size differences or the size categories, because then it'll be very easy to look at tiny, small, medium, large, huge, whatever. And you can look at it and just say, hey, if you're tiny, if something's more than one size level above you, then you can't strike, which means that small, aka halfling, to medium human would be okay, but tiny, like a sprite, to a human would not work. Let's see. Okay, so really this is for unarmed combat. Natural weapons still count as weapons. So in the striking procedure, during the intention, the player announces their intent to strike. If a fist is used, the character must be empty-handed or may drop or put away an item in hand. So brass knucks or something like that, I guess, is not really striking. It's more of a weapon. So you create normal initiative and hit rolls. If the strike hits, the base damage is 0. If a fist is used to strike, strength bonus may be added. A victim hit by a strike must roll a d20 and subtract his constitution score from the result. If the total is 1 or more, the victim is stunned for 1 round. The victim must also make a saving throw versus Death Ray with a +4 bonus to the roll or suffer a knockout. The duration of the knockout is simply the result of the previous roll of 1d20 minus constitution in rounds. All right, that's pretty interesting. So if you knock them out, they're not knocked out very long because it's only in rounds. So you're not even getting minutes. They're out for some amount of times, whatever many seconds in rounds, 10 seconds, something, whatever that is. So you roll a d20, subtract your con, and then if it's not a negative result, then you're stunned. And then if you're stunned, yeah, it must be. It's got to be if you're stunned. If it's not quite clear, because it makes it sound like you also make a saving throw. However, the duration of the knockout is the result of the d20 minus constitution. So if you didn't get stunned, then you won't actually be knocked out. So if I'm reading that correctly. And we have some optional rules I'm not going to get into. So for wrestling, let's see. I just really want to see what is the rule. What are we getting for wrestling? Here we go. The wrestling procedures. Okay, all right, so before the game, find each character's wrestling rating as follows. What is my wrestling rating? Divide the character's level by 2, rounding up. Add the bonuses for high or low strength or dexterity. Find the character's armor class without magic or dex. Multiply, okay, and then for monsters, multiply their hit dice by 2. If the monster's not wearing armor, add 9. If the monster is wearing armor, use the armor class listed. Okay. So you end up with some numbers. So let's just say we're second level. That would be 1. And we were just no, average. So no bonuses for that. And then I don't know, I guess we have armor class 7, let's say. So that would be 1 plus 7 is 8. We'd be 8. And then if we were wrestling with a goblin, maybe they'd be 2 plus whatever their armor class is. I'm trying to figure out how to make an example. I'm not sure it's working out for me. Okay. Each opponent involved in wrestling makes a simple roll of 1d20 plus their wrestling rating. First to win 3 rolls in a row pins the opponent. In the first round, each opponent rolls d20 and adds their wrestling rating. Okay, higher total wins, tie, no results. The opponent with a higher roll grabs. or may choose to hit or strike. Okay. In round 2, if a grab has been made, roll again. If they win again, the victim falls. Otherwise, grab is broken. And then in round 3, if the victim falls, roll again. So it's kind of like, yeah, you're first to 3. Doesn't sound like a ton of fun, actually. I feel like if you're evenly matched, which maybe makes sense, you're going to keep going back and forth. It's going to be hard to get 3 in a row on somebody. Probably some ways to tweak that if you like. I would definitely want to have fighters add their levels. I think they should be the best of that type, unless you want to have something for like a barbarian type that maybe they're better with unarmed and wrestling, in which case maybe they get a little bit more, and they have some optional rules. So there's some rules for you if you want them. And remember, these are on the player facing side. So these are meant to be, seen, understood by players, which makes sense because if you want that to be an option for the players, they probably want to understand how it works to see, hey, is it something I'm going to be good at or not good at or whatever. On to strongholds. Human strongholds. Any character of name level or greater may have a stronghold. So at this point, right, it's level 9 out of 36. So basically you're third of the way through the BECMI progression and hey, strongholds. It may be purchased, built, if there's land available, or seized. A character can ask a ruler for a territory or stronghold or may find a remote area and settle it. However, a character who owns a stronghold is not automatically a ruler. Your DM will tell you what must be done to become a ruler. So that's kind of the first interesting little wrinkle. It's not enough just to build a stronghold. Well, you can build the stronghold, but it doesn't really give you the land. You just have the stronghold. And then I don't know if they're going to detail what must be done. Presumably we're going to find out, but I guess we'll see. A demi-human character may build a stronghold when they reach maximum level. If the character's clan has a smaller stronghold than the new one, the clan will want to move in. Otherwise, they will still support the new stronghold by moving up to 40% of their clan into the new location. The political leader of a clan is called the clan master. The spiritual is the keeper of the relic. A player character does not normally gain any of these titles. They require great amounts of work and time, leaving none for adventuring. The highest rank normally achieved by a PC demi-human is that of clan holder. A clan holder serves the clan and may indeed own the structure of the clan stronghold, but does not control the clan members. So pretty interesting little split duties here. So you can, if you're a demi-human like a dwarf, an elf, halfling, you can build, find, whatever, grab a stronghold. And if it's big, if it's impressive, then your clan may move in, or your whoever your locals are. I'm not sure who would be a clan, but let's just say you were the elves of Mirkwood and you find a new spot, then either the elves of Mirkwood will move in or they'll send a bunch of their folks to move in. But the key thing here is that having moved in, you may own the stronghold, but they're not under your command, at least not directly, because there are 2 NPCs who are basically in charge of the clan, which would be the clan master politically and the keeper of the relic spiritually. And then you get to serve them. So it's kind of an interesting idea, it seems like they're setting up to be different than the human ones, which is pretty fascinating. Let's see. So the demi-human races care little for human politics, and clan masters and keepers do not seek human dominion titles. But a PC clan holder may seek and achieve a title, baron, count, etc., by representing the clan in its dealing with humans. Permission must first be obtained from the clan master and the keeper, but this is a common practice, especially if the PC owns the stronghold. I probably wouldn't put a bunch of I mean, I suppose you can make it into kind of adventuring or some kind of hey, you got to achieve these things. But I might not put too much because it would be a bummer, right? I'm an elf. I've maxed out my level. I'm gonna go do this thing, and the clan moves in, and suddenly I'm just taking orders again, right? And so at least at this point, and remember, the assumption it tends to be with the worlds at this stage of the game that they're kind of human dominated with demi-humans as minorities having kind of places of strength and homelands and stuff, but in terms of the world stage, they're kind of on the side. So it makes sense in a way that this loophole they're sort of the game's kind of giving you is that you'll be able to deal with the majority humans, and but your clan is still your clan. Hey, Michael Frager, this is the actual companion book. Yes, this is not a retroclone. This is straight from the companion book. Hey, Aloof, thanks, but I'm all good, but appreciate it. Okay. More information. All right, so there'll be some more stuff later on. Okay, about that. Wilderness. Life is hard in the wilderness, but can be simpler than in civilized areas, quote unquote civilized. The wilderness settler faces problems of survival, fighting off marauding monsters and barbaric hordes while trying to attract new settlers. Years may pass before the newly created community can thrive in peace. Or civilization, quote unquote civilized lands have owners who either live on the land or merely claim and rule it from afar. Many established rulers have problems keeping order. Many areas of the realm are quote unquote borderlands, where aspects of civilized and wilderness life mix freely, and where some may not even believe that their ruler exists. The rulers of large territories often seek others who might be willing to help, offering land and titles in exchange for loyalty and service. This is basically your feudal setup. If your character settles in a civilized area, there will be fewer problems with survival, but more problems with other people. The following background information is not needed for normal play, but is provided for more details for campaign play. So kind of it's just setting up, right? Okay, so it's setting up your choices as a player. Because remember, just again, this is book one. This is for the players to read. Hey, you want to go in the wilderness? Great. You're going to have to fight up monsters. You're going to clear things up. It's going to be long and slow, but you're kind of being on your own in the wilderness has the benefits of you're on your own in the wilderness in a way. Sure, you're gonna have to be fighting off the monsters by yourself, but there's nobody else around to kind of cause you problems, or there's no politics really. Is that you're off on an island and you get to kind of do what you want. Or you can go in the civilized, quote unquote, civilized realm, which is not going to have nearly as much of doing the kind of monsters thing, but now you're going to be embedded in the political web of the realm, which is going to have its own dangers. All right, so now we have staff. Every stronghold is maintained through the work of many people, the quote unquote staff. A staff size can vary wildly depending on the title of the ruler, the size of the stronghold, and so forth. The following details apply only to a quote unquote average human stronghold. Staff is all the same race as the PC. Any mixed staff will eventually cause problems. I don't know. Fine, I guess. I would probably play more loosely with that concept, but I think you can kind of understand if you have someone, let's say, I think maybe you could appreciate if you had like a really long-lived elf in the household. It's kind of a weird, might seem weird to everyone else, or even weird to the elf that they're serving this. I don't know, it would be some kind of cycle of people, and they're kind of staying the same. Might seem weird, but I don't know if you had a dwarf or a halfling or somebody else. I probably wouldn't make that a big problem, but this might be there is a setting here, right, where like kind of at this point is it just Mystara? Is it the known world? Is it kind of migrated to Mystara yet? Anyway, there's kind of some implied setting that's going to be kind of mixed in here that you can take or leave. Okay, troops may be kept in a stronghold, garrisoned, but again, problems. Okay, will arise if they are a different race. All right, I guess that makes sense in some ways. If you're ruling humans, but you have an army of dwarves or goblins or elves, that might be seen as kind of you're oppressing them. Otherwise, I don't know if they're mixed, maybe not. I wouldn't mind. It's some of the things you can deal with it with more in more detail, right? With more nuance, or you can just use some kind of hard, fast rules. The ruler is directly served by retainers and servitors. A retainer is a noble-born person or an unusually loyal follower. A servitor is a faithful servant, often gaining the job through inheritance. Many types of common servitors include armor, barber, carpenters, cellarmen. This is your wine steward, your cooks, your dairyman, falconer, forester, gardener, grooms, kennelman, miller, portalman, potter, poultryman, stonemason, and weavers. And then we have some peasant workers. What do we have here? For example, in a barony, let's see. The number of peasants available is determined by the population. As an average, each peasant family consists of 5 persons. 5% of the peasants are available to serve the ruler. Hey, for example, in a barony of 100 families, which would be about 500 people, the baron has 25 peasant servants. Okay, so you can easily come up with some numbers. You can look at the population and then just do that quick little math and get to the kind of find that number of how many servants are around. The total inhabitants of a stronghold is the number of servants plus servitors, retainers, and family. When visitors come, another 5% of the peasants can be used as servants if needed. In large dominions, even the original 5% may not be needed to serve all at once, except for tournaments. I think the one thing that's interesting here is that they don't really say what the minimum number is. Like, how many servants do you need? So you get 25 in this 100 family barony, but how many do you actually need? Because here it says, well, you might not even need all the 5%. but I'd only know that if I kind of knew how many I needed, so I'm not sure. Maybe they'll say it later on. Or you could just roll some dice. Advisors and officials. Most rulers have advisors to handle the many details of the dominion and stronghold and to advise the ruler as needed. The most common advisors are the artillerist, castellan, chaplain, engineer, guard captain, herald, magist, chief magistrate, reeve, sage, seneschal, and steward. Steward of Gondor, an artillerist, siege weapons, bailiff, is in charge of one area of the stronghold. A castellan is responsible for the military bits of a stronghold. Chamberlain oversees cleaning and food serving staff. Chaplain, chief cleric, engineer, right? An equerry for horses. The guard captain leads all the personal guards. A herald, a retainer who knows the signs, symbols, and seals of most all the dominions near and far. Hey, Blarcorp. A magist, get a nice little magic user action. Magistrate for law. Marshal trains troops and guards. Provost is a tax collector. Reeve is a bookkeeper. Sage, seneschal, the most important person in the stronghold except for the ruler. The seneschal is appointed by the ruler and is responsible for anything with which the ruler does not choose to bother. The seneschal is the ruler when the ruler is not there. Sheriff is police. Steward is for kind of day-to-day running of the stronghold. The warden protects some bits, game warden, town warden, etc. And then you might have some special positions, squires, lady in waiting. Ooh, didn't skip anything. Oh, I might have. Whoops. Cool. So there's your kind of stronghold thing. So you get a lot. Right? We had, what was this? This was about a page and a half. Hey, Terrence. Page and a half on, well, maybe a little bit more. No, really, a page and a half on strongholds. And it's very few rules in there, but it's giving you a nice overview of the kind of things you need. How many peasants do you get to work the place, right? What kind of officials do you have? What do those officials do? We don't really know too much about the intricacies. There was something about some of them had parenthetically how much you're paying for them. So, for example, the sage is 2,000 gold pieces a month. Reeve is 500 gold pieces a month. Chief magistrate is 2,000 a month. Chief steward 1,000 a month. So you get some ideas, but overall, it's just giving you this kind of nice overview for the character's perspective on a little bit of what it takes, a little bit what it means, and kind of what's involved with your stronghold, who you should be hiring, who you should be thinking about. Maybe you need to start budgeting out for different things. What do you want to have? What do you need to have? Here's all the stuff. When playing the role of a fantasy character, many things are ignored and rarely or never mentioned in the game. For example, an adventurer must clean and oil his weapons and armor. Someone cooks breakfast, and someone probably snores in their sleep. These things do not affect the adventure or the game. A character with a high charisma score could be a quote-unquote smooth talker in negotiations, whether or not the player could do the same. Thus, you only need to remind the DM of the adjustment to the reaction roll. The DM considers the actions and abilities of the character, not those of the player. So this is really getting into that, which is another one of these areas that I think sometimes, but this is BECMI, right? So this is definitely kind of the old school gaming tradition with the new school approach of things like perception checks, or can I just make an intelligence check to do it? So what they're saying here is that, hey, your character's a smooth talker. As a player, you're not a smooth talker, but you can tell the GM, oh, I'm saying this, that, or the other to the guy, and oh, by the way, my guy's charismatic, so I do get a +2 bonus to the roll. So it's interesting that they cover that here because it's one of those things that often comes up. Like for me, for example, I'm not a big fan of using your intelligence roll, let's say, as a stand-in for coming up with thoughtful ideas as a player. I don't mind if you come up with kind of a crazy plan that requires some level of something, and I say, hey, make an intelligence check, something to make sure you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's. But I want your plan to come from you as a player and not from the like, I have 19 intelligence. But there's definitely that school of thought. So it's interesting that they kind of bridge that here in this book too, which is else. But it is what it is. Because I kind of feel like this may be more important to be upfront kind of thing. No, it was quick. Outage averted. The DM may apply the same principle to many game situations. One game mechanic often used is an ability check. A roll of the ability score. Okay, blah blah blah. We don't need to see the particulars, right? If the DM wants to include riddles and puzzles in games, they need not all be presented to the players. A character might solve a puzzle by making a check against intelligence. See, here's what I don't like. But then I'm not a big fan of the puzzly thing. I mean, I like physical puzzles and things like that, and I feel like the dungeon itself is kind of a puzzle. Hey, Warrior King. But I don't have a 19 intelligence, but I have at least a 19 IQ. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Some of the puzzles may provide entertainment for the players and may be discussed in detail, but the player should not be required to be the characters in this way. A character with 18 intelligence should be smarter than most players. See, there it is. Well, they're definitely leaning it. And again, fascinating. And I have not really read this before, so it's fascinating that they're coming to the same conclusion that they do in kind of modern games, and with kind of a similar idea. I think on the one hand, here's what I'll say. I'm not a huge fan of the puzzles. I've often joked about the Sudoku on the floor of a dungeon. I don't think that stuff is fun. I think it's annoying to me. I know there's some folks that love Sudokus, and if you're with a group and they love, that they love Sudokus, then putting a Sudoku on the floor of your dungeon would probably be a good move. It will engage them and let them do that. Where I would see for myself, looking at something like this, it would not be for me to make a puzzle or riddle in the game and flesh it out, and then you just roll it. If it was something like the two doors and two magic doors, one always tells the truth and one always tells a lie, and you ask them a couple of questions, you can figure it out, right? Or they say statements. They say statements about themselves or the other doors, and then you can logic it out and figure it out. And then you got that, or you can just make a roll. But what I would do is have a puzzle that I'm not going to explain to the characters, but that to the players, but that the character does solve. Like, okay, I know this guy, there's a weird cube and it's got all kinds of indentations and things. And then maybe the dull-witted fighter's looking at it going, I don't know. And then he hands it to the wizard, and the wizard, I know, has 19 intelligence. So then I just describe how they're able to open up and do whatever. I'm not trying to actually have them really solve it. And I wouldn't even roll, really. It's like, okay, this guy is below 9, so he can try to roll maybe, or you just kind of get it, that kind of thing. And it not be that. But that's maybe as far as I would take it. And I don't even really love that. I would probably just say, like, you fiddle with it for some time and you either figure it out, or you need to take it to a sage or do some kind of action. But I think it is kind of fascinating that we're in BECMI and we're getting this same kind of thing, right? So I think, we find sometimes that these things that we feel like these types of games are so different. And it goes without saying that there's kind of a difference between sort of old school gaming and OSR, in terms of that there are a lot of philosophies around OSR that didn't really exist, or didn't exist in the way that people talk about them now back then. So even though in the OSR we might make some hard divide between these things, clearly that wasn't the case when we get to BECMI. Okay, after reaching name level, quote unquote name level, characters know their professions and would not make major errors. Though the player of a thief might forget to mention some detail of examining a treasure chest, the character would not make a fatal mistake, and the DM may prompt the player for the right action. So this is, and Daniel, aka Banskeep, does this in his game, where he will relax some of the requirements for doing things because he assumes proficiency. And I think that's a nice way to go about it. Hey, you're a 9th level thief. You just kind of know things now, and you don't have to keep doing the things you're doing. It's a little bit like, well, when we're the first few levels and every time we enter a hallway, we say we've got our 10-foot pole out, we're doing blah, blah, blah. By the time maybe you get to 9th level and you're in the dungeon, the GM just takes it for granted that you got your 10-foot pole out, you're doing the blah, 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 because old hat to you now. And in the same way, maybe you would have, as a GM, allowed some kind of gotcha. Oh, the thief didn't say they did this kind of thing, so haha, fine. But now at a certain level, it's like, I know that they know, right? And I'm going to reward their proficiency by not looking for any little loophole in what they said to get them, but just assume that the character who's done this now thousands of times in their thieving career knows kind of what they're doing. And this is another concept that comes up oftentimes, not necessarily with just modern games, but just as kind of that modern concept of kind of rewarding your character's proficiency, looking at them and saying, we are skilled at what we're doing. Now in a lot of the old school games, you don't start. Some of the new school games, that's the assumption at level 1 when you're starting the game that you are proficient. That's not necessarily the case here, but they are saying is at a certain point, right around this 9th level or so, you have achieved that proficiency. All right, so that's it about character, and again, this is all player facing, so they really want you to know this. This is not just some hidden things, and I think that's always interesting to look at. Well, what are they telling the players? What are they telling the GMs? Are the things they're telling game masters that they're not telling players? Well, they're telling players that hey, you should kind of this should be right because what you're doing here in this area, excuse me, is you really are highlighting to players what their expectations and things should be. And they're saying that you should have the expectation now that when you reach 9th level, when you are getting into companion mode, that you are proficient and that the GM should understand that. You should know that, and your GM should also know that. Okay, character classes. So we just get, I'm not really going to get in here. We get just more XP tables, saving throws, turning tables. Let's see. We have definitely have some kind of a little bit of fleshed out rules. So for a cleric, or this is cleric, yeah, cleric. For building a stronghold, the cleric who decides not to travel must report to a superior of some type, either a church official or a political ruler, to ask for land. Some land is usually granted unless the cleric has had problems with a superior in the past. If so, some service may be required, such as a quest before the land is granted. So that's kind of cool. You become a cleric, you say, hey man, give me some land. And they ought to do it unless you've pissed them off. Parenthetically, the dungeon master must decide whether the cleric's church has the power to make such grants according to the civilization and politics of the campaign world. All right, so it's not absolute. So if you're a high level cleric in the Church of Paupers that has nothing, well, they can't grant you that they don't have. A landowning cleric gains the ability to rise in power among the theocracy. More lands can be gained. More quote unquote normal men will settle the area around the cleric's stronghold, and more income will result from the settlement. And then you can also, so that's if you want to choose to become a landholder. So we're looking at this kind of, a path splits in a snowy wood or whatever the Robert Frost said. You could choose, go the landowner route, the domain route, or you can choose travel. Cleric who decides to travel may follow one of two routes in civilized lands or in the wilderness. Cleric who travels within the boundaries of the civilized world usually looks for ways to help those of the same alignment, whatever that may be. Cleric may travel alone with hirelings or with other clerics. The following details exist for a cleric who doesn't own land. All right, so here we go. So the cleric cannot rise in authority in the church. The cleric should gain experience points for helping those of the same alignment. Special adventures are frequent as the problems encountered in other lands often require a great leader for a successful solution. The cleric often visits local rulers and may gain special knowledge from them. However, conflicts with powerful landowning clerics may arise, and they might banish, exile, or imprison the traveling cleric if their disagreements cannot be resolved. Finally, the cleric gains fame, for better or worse. Tales of the cleric's deeds will remain after the cleric leaves, and these tales may attract other powerful characters and monsters to the cleric. So some kind of neat stuff, right? The church hierarchy, which is not the same as your character level, but your church hierarchy, to whatever extent you have one, you can't do that if you're itinerant, if you're traveling the lands. You're also going to gain experience points for helping folks on an alignment basis. So if you're good, help good folks. If you're neutral, helping neutral folks. If you're evil, helping evil folks. You're going to get to special adventures because you're a spiritual leader now. And this is the thing, right? Even though you're only a third, because remember, all this stuff is kind of kicking in at name level, which is 9th level. And that used to be, you're looking at BX, you're looking at the white box, you're almost at the end of the road. But not here. We're going all the way to 36. But even though some things have been stretched out, the idea is at 9th level, you're a player. Hey, some guy. You are a player on the stage. So now you get to travel around and people are going to look to you as a spiritual leader. Now, when you go into a town, the local lords are going to want to have, either you're going to want to meet them, but they're probably also going to want to meet you. Other high-level clerics might feel threatened by you or might want to use you in their schemes or whatever. Like there's all this stuff going on. And then folks are going to remember what you do when you're traveling through wandering lands like Cain. They're going to remember if you walked across the rice paper without leaving a scratch. They're gonna remember. So Do good, for goodness sake. Whoa, somebody's coming. Oh, wait, hold on. There's more. What did I miss at the bottom? Cleric who travels to the wilderness. All right, so that was if you're staying in civilization, right? So then once you decide if you're going to travel, now it's, okay, civilization, which we just covered, or wilderness. If you go into the wilderness, clerics may discover a long-lost ruin or shrine to either destroy or sanctify. Ooh, I like that option. And there's my cat, Bruce. Bruce, I can't help you right now. The cleric may discover a new race or civilization. The tales of the wilderness cleric's deeds are usually more distorted, so that little truth remains. Myths and legends about the cleric may arise, or possible misunderstandings at a future time. So if you're out in the wilderness, you're not going to get as much direct renown, and what people remember about you is going to be fuzzy because it's obviously had to be transmitted some distance and through all kinds of lenses before it even gets to people who could remember. Bruce! My cat's complaining. He's just, hold on a minute. Well, he's gonna have to. You're gonna have to fend for yourself, Bruce, for a few minutes. Okay, and then a neutral cleric can do whatever they want. But they can become a druid. The life of a druid is far different. Oh, wait a minute. A neutral cleric may choose either of the options above, or if desired, may choose to live and travel in the wilderness, becoming familiar with nature and the ways of animals. After some months of study, they become a druid and they get some new spells. Oh, very cool. Hey, RPG Grandma, I really do dig these. And I mentioned it. I think I mentioned it before. Like, my character in the OD&D game became a paladin, and it was very simple. You just kind of became a paladin, but you're still a fighter. It's like you gain that title and you gain some abilities, but basically all your progression and stuff is as it was. It's not a whole bunch more mess. You're not changing classes, you're not multi-classing. Just like, okay, you've unlocked the paladin package because you've done these things and you've taken on this responsibility. And I like this too for the druid. You get some new spells, you get some new stuff, and you're done. Bruce, I can't help you. You're gonna have to help yourself. Come on, Bruce. He's really complaining. Oh boy, my cats are extremely talkative. Betty more than Bruce, but when Bruce talks, I hear him. All right, so we got the druid here. A neutral cleric of 9th level or greater may choose to study nature. Right, they become a druid. The main difference between a cleric, a druid, and a normal cleric are: druid cannot cast any spells that affects good or evil. Oh, that's interesting. New spells for druids may be cast. Total number of spells may be cast in one day does not change, but the druid may select from both the cleric and druid lists. That's interesting. Hold on a second here. Bruce. Come here. Not coming over. All right. He keeps meowing at me, but he won't come into a position where I can help him from where I am. New spells for druids may be cast. The total, okay, that's fine. Druid must live in a woodland home. Druid may not wear metal armor nor use metal items. Leather is the only possible armor for druids, and you have to use a wooden shield. It's funny though, I think historically all shields were made of wood. There weren't really metal shields. There were shields that had a plating or kind of a fronted with metal, but metal. You didn't have just a completely. There was no Captain America metal shields apparently. RPG Grandma's got the Rules Cyclopedia, but don't know. Yeah, Rules Cyclopedia is kind of a condensed. Oh, you made it up, Bruce. So the Rules Cyclopedia, aka the RC, is condensed down BECMI, but there are some issues. It's kind of heavily edited, so you end up. There are some things that it's always when these things happen, right? There's some things that just get lost in the transition, maybe, or whatever. So I think the core stuff is all there in the RC. But I think there's maybe more room for misinterpretation, or just it's not quite as tight and it doesn't have the teachable stuff. I mean, in a similar way that Old School Essentials has the core of BX but lacks a lot of the teaching stuff that BX has in it, I think you find something similar in the Rules Cyclopedia. Let's see. There are only 9 druids of 30th level and the lesser number of each higher level. When a character gains enough XP to reach 30th level, one of the 9 must be found and fought by unarmed combat. If the character loses, the 30th level is not gained, but a new challenge may be issued every 3 months. Bum. All right, so go to the master set if you want to know about that. Let's see. Druid. A druid character studies life itself, the balance of nature, and all living things. Druid items and equipment are all made of items that were once alive. quote unquote dead things that have never been alive are repulsive to the druid. The character simply won't want to use or touch them. However, the character should not object if others use quote unquote dead things. Thus, the druid can be a challenging character to play, but the role can be very entertaining. So, in other words, you're not a jerk. You're not going around and you see the fighter in plate mail and you're just complaining and whining because they're using metal armor. You totally understand that other people are good with using that stuff. You're just not going to use it. The great enemies of all druids are the undead. Druids have no power to turn undead and may contact town churches if undead threaten their realms. So that's pretty interesting. Even though the great enemies of all druids are undead, they don't get to turn them. Pretty interesting. So this is kind of a neat, if you know, and this is the thing, like this is why I find it always fascinating to go back and look at these older books, materials, magazines, things like that. Because oftentimes you may look and go to say AD&D, like OSE Advanced, and I really haven't read OSE Advanced, so I might be talking completely out of my butt, but OSE Advanced has these classes from AD&D kind of ported back to BX. But here there's a different model for you, which is how BECMI is doing it, and kind of how the White Box and Greyhawk did it with Paladins and Rangers, and these concepts of, hey, you get this new title, but often stuff isn't really changing. So now you're a druid, but you're still following all your cleric stuff. All that stuff doesn't change. It's not a whole new class. It's kind of it's more like that subclass clerics, and then you kind of you specialize, if you will, into druids in a way. RPG Grandma says they tended to use a mix of stuff from D&D original to yeah, I think a lot of people did. I mean, we didn't, once we got to second edition, the group I was in, we weren't mixing and matching earlier on stuff anymore. We kind of stuck to second edition. However, but prior to that, we definitely did. All right, so I'm running up against the hour. Let me see here if there's anything else. We got some druid spells, which I'm not reading. So here we go. So fighters, we get their saving throws, whatever that stuff. Don't really care too much about that. So becoming a landowner, most dominion or own territory rulers are fighters. The art of fighting is a necessary skill in the D&D world, and professional fighters generally survive longer than other people. As a landowner, fighters are less restricted than other classes. They may remain independent or swear fealty to another ruler. Your DM will tell you what system of government is used in his campaign and what the character must do to obtain land and rule dominion. I assume there's more than one system of government. Remember, we looked at those maps and they had all kinds of different systems of government. As my chair is shrinking beneath me. Hold on a second. But I think maybe by campaign, they're meeting in a particular area. Traveling, the alignment of a wandering fighter determines his or her title, special abilities, and so forth. A lawful wandering fighter may be known as a paladin if he meets the following requirements. Otherwise, he may be a knight. A fighter must swear fealty to a lawful church to gain paladin status. The fighter must be name level or greater to be accepted by the church. Thereafter, the paladin may be summoned by the church's leaders at any time and must do as they command as long as their service aids in the powers of good. A paladin can detect evil up to once per round simply by concentrating, up to 120 feet of range. The paladin's wisdom score is 13 or greater. The character can cast cleric spells as if a cleric of 1/3 the level of the fighter rounded down. If the wisdom score is 12 or less, the fighter can still be a paladin but cannot cast spells. For example, a 17th level paladin can cast spells as a 5th level cleric. The paladin learns how to meditate and cast spells from the clerics of the church. The clerics will refuse any offer of compensation or payment for this service. A paladin can turn undead as if a cleric of 1/3 the level of the fighter rounded down. Paladin may only travel with a number of hirelings equal to no more than his clerical level, so basically a third rounded down again. And the paladin must assist anyone who asks for help, with two exceptions. Evil need not be aided, and if the paladin is on a mission for a higher authority, such as on a capital Q quest, serving a duke, etc., only a small amount of help need be given, along with an explanation. Assistance, quote unquote, never involves donations of money or items, but only service for a short time. So you can't just pay it off. But so here's the thing, right? So you just become, hey, you go this, you become a paladin, you unlock some stuff. But guess what? You're still just on the fighter's experience table, but now you're a paladin, and now you get some extra stuff with some extra things, which I just think is really cool and clean and neat way to do it. And bam, you just kind of you do some things, you unlock the paladin package so long as you follow the paladin requirements. Easy peasy. RG Grandma says you really don't need lots of classes, but understanding what classes do, how that manifests in the culture, and one of the classes actually they disguise multi-class for everyone's sanity. Yes, this is true, but I like classes, and I feel like something that I just think people get really too hung up on having some tiny amount of classes. I'm totally fine going like the white hack, I think, does, where they basically split it up into, hey, you have basically your stuff that are your kind of skill based, your stuff that's basically, what do they call it, like wises, basically stuff that's either kind of fighter types, magic types, or basically thief types kind of things, right? And then you can kind of make up your own. But I'm also okay if there's something that's really interesting and has some uniqueness, making a class over it. I always feel like look at what the rules and things you already have can do for you before you start just plugging in new stuff, because oftentimes you can make the thing you want with what you already have. And so in this case, I think looking at and saying, hey, a paladin is a fighter plus, you could either look at and say a paladin's a fighter kind of plus something, or they're a cleric plus something. In that case, they decided to go with fighter, and so they kind of made it this way. Maybe you could go the other way and have paladin as part of a cleric. Either way is probably good. In fact, you could have both. So I totally with you there, but I just think that oftentimes people just get this, I don't know, they get this weird thing where they're like, no, you only need the 3 core classes and nothing else. And yeah, sure, I guess. I hear you, but your grandma says, didn't see tiny as reasonable. Oh no, I got you. I'm just pointing it out because something I oftentimes get. I'm not necessarily in response to what you think, but just that it often comes up this concept of like only this many classes and no further. I mean, as long as you can manage it and as long as you can differentiate between them meaningfully in your game, I'm fine with it. But I really do like this kind of like where you're basically adding something on top of something else. Instead of taking a ranger and making a new ranger class, you have this ranger that's part of, you determine it's fighter like and you put on top of there. Now there may be some that really hang the middle between two. Like I'm really a paladin, you could go either way. If it's more fighty, then it's fighter. If you think of it's more cleric-y, then it's more cleric. But you know, you can ride the line. So a neutral, so that was for if you were lawful. A neutral wandering fighter may become a knight. To gain knighthood, a fighter must swear fealty to royalty. In return, the ruler will declare the character a knight. That ruler then becomes the knight's liege. Lawful and chaotic fighters may become knights if they do not become paladins or avengers. And we see avengers down the list. The following rules apply to knights, the most common of the wandering fighters. If summoned by his liege, the knight must report as quickly as possible and must serve as the liege orders. If the knight ever refuses to obey the liege or ever swears fealty to any other liege, the knight loses 3 levels of experience. Wham, bam. And you can increase that penalty if the offense warrants it. In addition, rumors and tales of the treacherous knight may haunt the character forever after. If his liege dies, the knight is free to choose another. Knight may petition the liege for a peaceful end to his oath. However, this is rare and rarely granted. A knight may visit any castle of any territory and request sanctuary. The castle owner must, by the customs of the land, give the knight a place to stay for up to 3 days, along with food and drink. No friendliness need be shown, but the knight cannot be challenged, attacked, or refused sanctuary. This custom is nearly universal. Man, I really dig this. That's a powerful kind of thing. You're traveling with a knight, they can go to any castle, whether it's your alignment or not, and say, give me 3 days of sanctuary. That could be, I mean, the right campaign when you're doing a lot of crawling across areas and moving around to be able to kind of go into a hostile place and ask for sanctuary and know that you've got your 3 days. Pretty slick. If a call to arms sounds, the knight must respond. This declaration can only be issued by the ruler of a large town or territory through which the knight is passing. When the call to arms sounds, the knight must immediately travel as fast as possible to the ruling castle of the territory and fight as ordered by the ruler. The knight is entitled to compensation for this service. The gift must be granted by the ruler issuing the call to arms if the knight demands it. There are 2 notable exceptions to this custom. In lands where quote-unquote civilization is unknown, this custom might not be used. More commonly, if the knight is within a territory that has declared itself hostile to the knight's liege, the knight need not respond. The knight may, in fact, be a known enemy and may be in great danger when a call to arms sounds. All right, so that's all that. And then we have one more, and then I got to call it a stream. A chaotic wandering fighter may become an avenger. He meets the following requirements. Otherwise, a chaotic wandering fighter may become a knight. All right, so the requirements are: the fighter must make an alliance with a chaotic church. This is not a swearing an oath of fealty, but a loose agreement of loyalty and support. The church may decline the offer. If the church accepts, the church's leaders may summon the avenger at any time, and he must do as they command. If they are disobeyed, all benefits of the avenger are lost. Even then, the fighter may regain avenger status by negotiating with a different church. An avenger can detect evil as the cleric spell up to once per round by concentrating. Okay, so this is kind of like I don't want to say an anti-paladin, but kind of. It's pretty similar. Similar stuff here. Yep. Similar things they can do the turn undead. An Avenger may not have human or demi-human hirelings. However, the Avenger may try to persuade monsters of chaotic alignment. Oh, that's interesting. If a chaotic creature is not immediately hostile, the Avenger may offer food or treasure, indicating through word or gestures friendship. If this fails, threats or combat resulting in surrender may accomplish nearly the same result. If the creature's reaction roll indicates friendship, the creature is persuaded, and that's italicized, to follow and obey the Avenger. The effect lasts for the duration identical to a charm magic user spell. Once it ends, it cannot be renewed. So that's pretty powerful because it doesn't mean just charm person, but it could be charm monster. But once it ends through whatever mechanics, it's over. An Avenger may visit any castle, ruin, or dungeon known to be ruled by an intelligent chaotic monster or character and using as alignment tongue, demand sanctuary. Oh, so you can't go to a, well, you can go to castles, but it's got to be ruled by a chaotic monster. So not just a person with a chaos alignment, but literally a chaotic monster. But that would mean kind of dragons and interesting creatures, and you can do the sanctuary bit there, which is also pretty strong. And it could also be a dungeon, but you have to be known to be ruled by an intelligent monster. So it can't just be any rando dungeon. It's got to be somewhere that has somewhere, like the Goblin King's labyrinth or something would work, but not just a underworld with a bunch of different things in there. Fighter combat options. Any wandering fighter who gains Paladin, Knight, or Avenger the following characters may use the optional combat maneuvers. And that's just Paladins, Knights, or Avengers. Any land-owning fighter who swears fealty to a ruler. Any demi-human character who achieves Knight status. So you get multiple attacks. You can use a smash. What does that mean? The character using a smash automatically loses initiative and accepts a -5 penalty to his hit roll. Attack hits, add the character's entire strength score to the normal damage inflicted. Wow. Plus magic and strength bonuses. Okay, so you have a strength, let's say you have a strength 17, which I guess is what, +2, +3? And you use smash. So you're going to go at the end of the round. But if you hit, not only are you doing your weapon damage, but you're doing 17 and you're still getting the +2 or +3 mod on top of it. So that's a crazy strong hit. You also have a parry, which you don't attack at all, but you block attacks. And anyone who comes at you hand to hand suffers a -4 penalty. And then disarm, you can only use against weapon using opponents. Natural weapons can't be disarmed. You make a normal hit roll. If the attack hits, no damage inflicted. Instead, the victim must roll d20 minus any dexterity bonuses of the victim plus those of the attacker. The modified roll is greater than the victim's dexterity score. The victim is disarmed. The victim may either switch weapons, use another weapon carried, suffering only the loss of initiative for the next round, or try to retrieve the weapon dropped. When retrieving a weapon, a victim must quote-unquote retreat. I think that's kind of your fighting withdrawal type thing. All right, cool. So I think that's the end of that. Oh, and then we get to magic users. All right, so rather than start this and stop this, we'll end it here, and then we will begin, I'm not sure when, next week, presumably since today's Friday, with continuing on. Didn't make it as far as I wanted to, but a lot of good stuff in here. This is book 1. This is just in the companion set. This isn't a retroclone. This isn't anything complicated. This is just the companion set, part of the BECMI line, as RBQ Grandma noted. It's also part of the Rules Cyclopedia, which has a good print edition. I don't know. I saw in drive-through that there's only digital PDFs, at least of the companion set. I know you can get the Rules Cyclopedia in a singular PDF. There's also print on demand. I think in terms of as a reference, the Rules Cyclopedia is fine. In terms of, again, that kind of extra context and teaching stuff, I think the individual books are go. So even if you have the Rules Cyclopedia, I would encourage you to potentially, if this interests you, pick up the individual books, because even if you end up using the Rules Cyclopedia as your table reference, being able to see the extra context, the extra content that's given around the rules and mechanics, I think will help flesh it out in a good way. Much like I think that even if you have Old School Essentials, read Basic Expert or read either from Mentzer or from Moldvay, because you get a lot of context that the retroclone doesn't give you because they're compressing it down into more of a reference book. Other than that, folks, I will talk to you later. Let me know what you think about this and what kind of books. I haven't even done, it's funny. I know I haven't even done the expert set, and I'm jumping to companion. I will go back and do expert. I'll probably have to go do a whole BECMI set. It's going to be kind of out of order, obviously, since I started here, but this is just kind of what struck me, so I went with it. Ian says they have the POD rule cyclopedia, and it feels like reference material. It is. It is. It totally is. It was really meant to bring all that stuff together into a singular volume, but it is missing some of the fleshing out. And I think the fleshing out is often very helpful. Again, it gives you the context, but also just gives you just get lots of ideas and things in the writing that you don't get when they kind of compress things down. Folks, enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.